Hey guys, and the very few gals that is watching. We're gonna do slang today. That was a bad intro. Doesn't matter, I don't edit stuff. Anyway, we got a couple things going on today. First, obviously, we're gonna review this custom piece. And to kind of let the cat out of the bag, I'm disappointed with it. So I thought this would be an excellent time to introduce the new Xtreme scale on how we rate statues. I've gotten a lot of suggestions by viewers that we should start rating them on a scale. So we're gonna do that today, and moving forward, all the new stuff I film will have those scales in them. So let's get rolling. Mr. X with the Xtreme channel here, and we're reviewing a custom quarter scale Old Man Logan vs. Hulk statue. But before we do that, I want to get into a brand new scale we're going to introduce. Every single new statue I film, we're going to use this scale to kind of rate the statue. And we're doing this because it was a great idea by many of the viewers. And I thought it's a good time to start because this guy's not going to get the highest scores. Let's just be honest. So before we do that, I want to tell you a few things about the scale. First, it's going to be used on all the new pieces I film. So after today is a Saturday, you may see some reviews without the scale. Those were already filmed. We already have some stuff in stock, or in queue. I never know what to say. I rhyme all the time. You better buckle up. It's going to be a bad review, not just because of the statue. But we're going to use a scale, and I was trying to figure out what kind of scale to use. Could I use a 1 through 10 scale? Could I use a school scale? A is good, F is bad. So I decided to make an Xtreme scale. So let me throw this up here and kind of explain how it works. And I'll probably do this for the next few reviews and always slightly touch on it. You always want to touch it a little bit. That's what she said. So here you go. This is the Xtreme scale. And I want you to think from left to right is bad to good. So instead of A, B, C, D, F, it's T, U, V, W, X. So on the far left, we have absolute trash. Horrible statue. U means it's not that good, it's kind of ugly. V is very nice, average, being polite maybe. Rail, if you remember that one. Rail is my own coined term, a mix between something I really want and a grail, so that's very, very good. And then of course we have Xtreme, or the ultimate grail. And each time we're going to show a little picture here. And again, for reminders, if you can't remember what everything stood for, left is bad, right is good. And we're going to do that in every aspect. So traditionally on a review, we talk about the concept. We talk about the design. We talk about the paint. And then we talk about the sculpt. And then we talk about the overall. And so we're going to score it in 5 categories every single review. And as you can imagine, it's my opinion. So it's, like a judge holding up signs. So if your opinion differs than mine, welcome to the human race. So today we're using the scale on this custom quarter scale Old Man Logan vs. Hulk piece. And we're going to talk a little bit about the origins of this specific piece when it comes to the concept and the design. But Old Man Logan is a comic book story set in the future where if you're really interested in it, go check out a recent segment I did called Xtremes, because I actually talk all about the comic book in it. It's a really, really cool storyline, and obviously in the end, Wolverine kills Hulk, which we'll talk more about in the concept. But this is a custom piece. So as a reminder, we don't talk about where custom pieces come from. This is my first purchase from this custom studio, and I believe, I could be wrong, this is their first production piece. And I kind of have a rule that I sometimes break, but I usually don't. I never buy a second piece from a custom studio until I have the first piece in hand. And this is an example of why I don't. I think there's some misses with this statue, and I think there's some things I really like. I'm still on the fence if I'm going to keep him, down the road. I'll definitely keep him for a year or so. But First of all, we talk about edition size, ES. I don't know the ES. I don't think it was ever listed on their page, and there was nothing on the bottom where there traditionally is, so that kind of has me a little worried. I do know there were not a lot of buyers for this, so I'm guessing the ES is somewhere between 20 and 35, and I'm probably right. It came in a very large one box with 2 layers of custom white foam that was really crumbly, kind of fell apart. So he came in a number of pieces like most statues do. This additional rock base for the second torso was a piece. Each torso is a piece. The Hulk base is 1 piece minus 5 of the rib bones that key in via peg. And I think that's it. Oh, and then his lower body is 1 piece that fits onto the statue. So fairly easy to assemble, 7-8 pieces. No directions needed, but directions are for what? And let's get measurements on him really quick. So obviously it depends on what torso you're displaying, but his absolute deepest part is probably about 23 inches. So this is going to command a lot of space. The widest point is about 25 and a half. And then with this torso, you're looking at 19 inches. And it's about 17 when it's sitting on this. The claws may account for a little bit more. Cost on him was $900, which for such a large piece and 2 torsos in the custom world really is not that bad. It's quarter scale, which means it's 1/4 the size that it would be in real life. And I want to jump in and talk about the concept and design right now, because a lot of this plays into the concept and the design. First of all, I want to talk about how big it is. So Wolverine seems like he's scaled correctly. He's a little bit of a shorter guy, but he's hunched over, so it's hard to tell. But I think just visually looking at it, it's decent. Hulk looks like he's way overscaled because his head is actually just as big as mine. His physical head, my figurative head, is bigger than anybody's in the world. But I think he's scaled right, because if you look at the comic, here's a picture of him. He's huge in the comic. And speaking of that concept, so this is taken directly from a page in the comic book, and I want to emphasize it's actually this torso right here. This one is actually not in the comic book, but I kind of like it better. It took me a little bit to figure out which one I like better. So here's a picture in the comic book of him ripping out. Pretty neat. And even when you look at the back, and of course we're going to see some close-ups, it all falls in line with the actual comic. Now looking at the concept here, first of all, starting at the base, Hulk is identical to the comic, so I really give him props on that. It's the same position, it's the same expression. Really, really impressed by that. So I think they did a great job. And then Wolverine, if you're displaying the correct torso, very, very similar to the comic, he just ripped out. There's some things to me that don't make sense, because in the story, he's ripping out of Hulk because Hulk ate him. So why would his clothes still be intact? His shirt's torn up, but his pants aren't. But that's the way it is in the story. So they stuck to the storyline, which I appreciate. And Wolverine's just in a badass rage mode. Part of the storyline is he never withdrew his claw, or drew his claws till the end of the story, because I don't want to spoil anything. If you really want to know more about it, go check out that Xtreme's video that I did. But very vicious, very Old Man Logan-like, very Wolverine-like. Now the other thing is, there's not really a lot of Old Man Logans out there. So when looking at Logan, there's a few different statue options. So first of all, Sideshow's new premium format that's coming out is Logan. Then there's some customs coming out. There's 2 War era Logans. There's one right here. And then you have another one right here. And then there's a custom Logan running with wolves. And then this has a switch out for an Old Man Logan. And of course I'm getting all of these. And I think with the concept, it's cool that they gave you two different torsos to choose from, in case for some reason you didn't like the more comic accurate one. So I've never seen a statue like this, and I think the scale is right. I think the concept is right. They matched it correctly. Some of the stuff you're going to see in the close-ups are the rib bones and the guts of the Hulk. So I think with the concept, I actually do give this a W. I think they did a great job nailing the concept. Fabulously done. Now let's talk about the design. A couple issues going on with the design. First of all, awesome that they offered two different torsos. And I haven't shown any pictures yet. Here's some pictures of the torso that's comic accurate. And then here is one with him ripping out and leaning forward. And regarding Hulk himself, everything fit in pretty well. There are a few small gaps where the rib bones go in, just a little bit, and it took me a while to figure out which one goes where. Another issue with the design, if you are displaying this torso on there, then it leaves the three holes here that his claws go into. Here's a picture of that. And again, I don't know how to fix it, but that is a small issue. Then the final issue with the design actually is the torso doesn't sit very well on the extra torso stand. This one does. It's still loose on there, but when inputting this one, it leans forward dangerously so. So I'm afraid to leave it in there because I might come home and it'll be in rough shape. So I think that loses a little bit on design. Come on. Don't want to stand up because you know how we do reviews in this place. Now, regarding the Xtreme scale, I think the design is a very nice. Some things that could have done better, but nothing that greatly affects the statue or puts it off. So right in the middle here. Now let's talk about the paint and sculpt, and this is where some bad grades are going to come up. First of all, it's tough. Because some of the colors, if you were reading this comic, it's a very dark comic. So I think matching the paint is very difficult. I think the sculpt is... I think the sculpt's kind of a let the cat out of the bag. It's probably going to be right in the middle. But I am very disappointed with the paint. I think there's some things that could have definitely been done a lot different and a lot better. The more I look at this piece, the more I like it. And I'm also trying to keep into consideration, I believe this is their first project they did. So not everyone can come out of, you know, the gates with a perfect project. But let's jump in, and I'll start at the base, which is Hulk. Good things and really bad things, and we'll kind of talk about both the paint and sculpt, and then we'll give the grades at the end. So first, checking in Hulk's guts here. Let's start there. This is gross. It's really gross looking. Kind of craziness going on here. It looks like a mess, but it's kind of a calculated mess. You actually see some of his big intestine that Wolverine is stepping out of. You see right here Wolverine's boot inside of him, and if you get a close-up right here, you actually see Wolverine isn't wearing a boot. He's wearing a sock with a hole in it. So cool little extra detail there within the sculpt. The rib bones coming out. And you'll notice I'm not talking a lot about paint here because one of the overlaying factors with the paint is they have Hulk's green blood everywhere. And unfortunately, it doesn't look very good. So it's hard to tell, for example, the rib bones, if they looked good, the paint on them looked good underneath the Hulk blood. Same with the intestines and the guts on the inside. It's an interesting dilemma here. The Hulk blood does not look good. In his guts here, it doesn't look bad necessarily. It does look bad on Hulk's body and Logan's body, which we're going to look at in a second here. But I do like the sculpt of the insides, the guts. I think it's decently done. I like the fact that there are bones coming out everywhere. His rib bones, obviously his spine was here. I think one huge missing thing, and you're going to find this on Logan and Hulk as well, should have been more texturized. There's no texture on the bones. There's no texture on the boot. There's no texture on the guts. Check out the inside of his skin flaps here. I think this looks great. I like the color they used, the browns and reds, and then you see some green veins in there. That's really good. It's the best paint job on, or part of the paint on here. But again, no texture at all. Very shiny, very smooth. Could have used some calculated texture. Let's look at Hulk's blood on his body. This is a mess. It's too thick. It doesn't have any definite form. And I think it's too dark. They should have, you know, it's hard to do green blood, obviously, but maybe it's the flow of it that it just doesn't look good to me. I wouldn't have made it this thick. I would have made it flow better. And then moving on to Hulk's skin, there is a tiny bit of texture in here, but not much. They should have used more texture. I do like use. It's very comic accurate. The really dark greens and the blacks mixed in. You see different, it does look like Hulk's skin. You see a few different areas with veins. Not a bad job on that, both the sculpt and the paint. Moving up to Hulk's head, his hair first. His hair kind of looks stupid. It's accurate to the comic. I don't know what I don't like about it. You don't know what you don't know. However, I do think they did a great job on Hulk's face. Not only on the sculpt of the expression, and again, you have different underlying tones and textures within there, all the way from his ear to his lips. Great sculpt around his nose. And then his mouth. Again, this isn't your traditional Hulk. It's not a human-like mouth. It's the Hulk from the comics, so the teeth and the tongue and the lips are very accurate, fantastically done. I like the sculpt around his mouth. They added a little bit of red to the inside of the lips, and the color and they added a little bit of a glisten effect on the tongue, which is great. And then his eyes, really good job on his eyes. I like that cloudy green color and the sculpt around them. And then really quick, the other base, I'm going to jump to this guy really quick. The fact that they added this, I think that kind of helped with the concept to make it a very good concept. It is almost cave-like. So the cave that he came out of makes sense. However, the sculpt and paint on it is not good. So jumping to this, they should have, there's no texture on the rock. Again, I'm not a texture freak, but there's no texture on this statue. Rock, you should have some. It's one or two basic colors on here, which it was very dark in the comic. Then the green blood is a completely different color than we see anywhere else. I understand why it's green blood, because it'd be dripping down from whatever Wolverine torso you have on there. But it's not a good color. It looks like neon paint, glow in the dark blood. So I think that's a miss. And then jumping over to Logan, let's check out his bottom legs here. His bottom legs, his only legs. First, he's very thick, which, you know, he is an older Logan, so he's not going to be in the same shape he used to be in. The pants, I like the fact that they added some folds in there in certain areas. Certain areas he's tight, so he's a very, the anatomy on him is not very good, but it might be accurate for an older Wolverine. The tears do not look good. They're too clean. The rips and the skin beneath the rips looks like a zombie. The white, the color they used is not good. And then the other part you've probably noticeably noticed is that Hulk blood. I think the amount of it is great. There would be tons because he's coming out from the inside, but it just looks like the coloring and the effect on it looks like a kid did it. It looks like I could do it. Not a good job. There is some stitching on the sides of his pants, the sculpt of it, and then on his pockets, which is nice. His belt looks decent, good coloring to it. Again, zero textures, almost zero texture on his pants too. That could have helped the statue a lot, I think. And then looking at his torso, I like how ripped up the shirt is, but the rips are kind of too clean. It would be more shredded, like maybe it needed more detail close up in the sculpt. You have the same issue with the green blood all over. Again, it's different. It almost looks like different, not different colors of green, but it's darker in some areas. I just don't know if whoever painted this knew what they were doing. Not that I could do it, but the front of his buckle looks really good. Like I said, great job on his belt. Then the anatomy of Wolverine, this is probably what kind of, sets me off about his legs, is he's in really good shape up top, but down low it looked like not so much. So he's very buff, kind of reminds me of Rocky Balboa, that movie where Rocky was like 60 and he fought someone. He had the same, very similar body, so this may be accurate for an older guy because he's probably 150 years old in this. I'm not sure how old he is in the comic. The skin coloring looks okay. I've seen better before. You do see some veins in there, especially in his arms, his biceps, and all throughout his arms. It's almost too veiny. That's what she said. So some opportunity in different areas. Check out his claws. His claws are not metal. Having metal Wolverine claws is kind of the standard nowadays, so I think that's a little disappointing. Detail sculpt in his hands is okay. And then checking out his portrait. Again, this is not your traditional Logan. This is directly from the comics, so you got to remember that. I think they did a decent job with his hair. They could have done more strands, a little more detail. I think that's a problem with a lot of the sculpt, just more close-up detail that you typically see on like some high-end pieces sculpted by Daniel Bell or Franco or the countless others. The expression on his face, now this depends which face you're looking at. Right now it's the comic accurate one. He's screaming, so there is a lot of emotion and lines in the face. But I think his tongue is way too big on this. It's so wide. Kind of just looks like a blob, and then his teeth are so short. His lips are curled back, but his teeth are so short, which is one reason I'm not displaying this one. I just don't like the portrait on it. But let's look at the portrait on the other one. I think is much better. So look around the mouth. Again, much better job. Look at the teeth, a little bit of glistening on there, the right size, the right shape. Again, some menacing expression throughout his face. A little more Old Man Logan accurate. And check out the eyes. We didn't look at the eyes on the other one, but they're the same. The eyes are a little too small, but they're done very well. But they're very small, so I think they're underscaled for the portrait. So sculpt on this thing, like I said, I think there was a lot of detail just missed. And I'm not going to say the sculpt is ugly. It's kind of in between ugly and very nice, but we're going to give it an ugly because some of those details I think were missed. And the paint, this is a pretty bad paint job. So unfortunately, I am going to give the paint the lowest score. If I'm going to keep this piece for a long time, I will definitely get it repainted. So I think, you got to weigh the pros and the cons. I think the concept is awesome. No one else has done this, which I don't know why, because it's such a popular story. You get a lot of bang for your buck. You have a huge statue, 2 torsos for $900. But the paint and sculpt, I think, are just a miss, and typically you see that a lot of times at the first. So overall, I'm going to have to give this statue a U for an overall score here. It's definitely not one of those statues we look at and be like, that's a good statue. You definitely see it, and ooh, there's some things there. But I do like the concept. I'm keeping it with all my Logan vs. Hulks. I have a whole bunch of Wolverine vs. Hulk statues. I currently have the ARP. I have my Sideshow vs. Hulk custom painted. Alejandro's Phase 4 on order. And then this guy will be added to that. I like that it's kind of a sequential of Wolverine's life fighting Hulk. Pretty neat. Let me know your thoughts on this piece. And again, keep in mind, I think it's their first piece, trying to be a little nice to them because there's definitely some opportunity missed. But give them an A for effort. That's not really a thing. Participation ribbons, but that's how the world works sometimes. So I appreciate you guys hanging in there with me. Tell me what you think of the piece. Tell me what you think of the new grading system. I know U, which essentially is like a 2 on a 1 through 5 scale, is kind of harsh considering it stands for ugly. But let's be realistic. These are high-end collectibles. We spend a lot of money on this, so I have no problems if something's below average calling it ugly. I don't think the statue's ugly, just the scale grade is. Parts of it are ugly. Take care, guys.